we want to start a class meeting. Okay, how do you start that? You find where desire is.
Yeah.
You know, the original question was desire to flee from the wrath to come.
Yeah.
We might say it differently today, but at the very least, it's not a program. You find where there's longing.
Yeah.
Where is their desire? You find your 8 people that have desire and say, okay, we're going to start.
Welcome, everyone, to podcast number 243, Renew Your Mind. With us today, we have Pastor Jeremy Touroo. We have our youth and family director, also our praise band leader, Jordan Kettlewell, and we have our very special guest, Shane Chellis, Pastor Shane Chellis. Sorry, I have not been introducing you correctly, Shane.
I've been very offended about it.
I thought you were. Oh, gosh. Thank you. I needed that. As a Methodist, I didn't know what a class meeting was for a long time. Now I do. So one of our questions is what's the difference between what is a class meeting? What's the difference between Bible study class meeting? And we have a lot of small groups too that maybe they want to, how do you start a class meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Like I have a thought in my head of how to start one.
Yeah.
But there's some responsibility there. Is it me that I have to do it? Not on my own, but does somebody invite me? How does that all work? I threw you a whole bunch of questions, so take whatever one you want.
Well, I think, the first one's the difference between a class meeting and a Bible study, 2 completely different things.
Mm-hmm.
Bible study is good and right, and we need to be doing it and seeking the scriptures. And what is God saying to us?
Mm-hmm.
But that can be what they call, and Kevin Watson talks about this in his book on class meeting. He says that's the difference between an informational, and I think, and he points this out. He does a lot better job than what I can do here with it, talking about this. But he says, with the rise of the Sunday school movement, however long ago that was, that's really what we've become. It's about information, and the idea, whether we consciously or unconsciously realize it, is that we expect transformation via osmosis. That if I learn something, that's gonna communicate into transformation. Well, that's not how it works. That's not how we're wired. And so that's good to learn and to study and things like that. But a class meeting is not an information-based meeting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a Bible study. That's, again, they would call that a class meeting a transformational group, where you're being open and honest about your own heart.
Mm-hmm.
The condition of, that question, how is it with your soul, or how is your relationship with God going? That strikes right to the heart. You're not studying. It's not a study.
Yeah.
Because again, you can do studies all day long, whether it be book studies or Bible studies, whatever, and not ever really go to the heart and get honest with your own heart and life about what's really going on. In a nutshell, that's the difference between the two. And I think that's why they need to be separate. Because some people want to combine things.
Well,
let's talk.
Yeah.
Well, guaranteed it's going to go one way or the other eventually. And a class meeting has been, what's been talked about a class meeting is this very deliberate on keeping it.
This is why we're meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's why you're structured the way it is. It's why you had a hard and fast timeline, because you're staying on track. This is why we're gathering. Yeah, these other stuff, great, but they're not this. But I'd say that in a nutshell is the difference between those two.
Okay. This is kind of a weird question, but we wanted to hear about the outreach ministries you've been involved in, and you've talked about the circuit rider. Is that when you're involved in a outreach ministry, is that in a sense a class meeting? Like, do you not a class meeting, but you're going out to reach people and to have a relationship with them? I guess it doesn't turn into a class meeting. I mean, that's more one-on-one.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but like I said, weird question. Our outreach
How might the
ministry,
two go together?
yeah, how might they go together?
Hmm.
Is there any similarities, or?
Well,
And maybe I took us way down a rabbit hole. So,
yeah. I think circuit riding onto a class meeting it might be a little bit different, a
Mhm.
different thing. The closest thing that I have when it comes to different ministries that I've been a part of over the years, the closest thing that I've been a part of to an actual class meeting is a recovery meeting, because you're doing the same thing in a recovery meeting. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to an AA meeting, but in an AA, I said, and I think I offended people when I said it, which isn't necessarily uncommon, but I said from the pulpit, I was preaching a sermon. I said, I oftentimes like to go to AA meetings more than I like to come to church, because the AA meeting is one of the few places I can have an honest conversation.
Yeah.
And it's true.
it is true.
It's true.
Yeah.
Well, what's going on? If you go to an AA meeting, what are you doing? You're sharing what's going on with you. And that's what the substance is. So if I go to an AA meeting and somebody says the topic is powerlessness, what's everybody talking about? They're talking about their own experience.
Yeah.
Of powerlessness. And there's no and you can't play games in those contexts, because I guarantee you everybody in that context has been playing games with themselves and everybody else for years.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that they're there is because you got to stop playing games.
Mm-hmm.
And so the level of honesty that comes out of that, that's the closest thing.
Okay.
And that's the kind of thing that I have grappled with over the years, going, this is what we need to be doing in the church.
Mm-hmm.
This is what a class meeting is when we start getting to the real.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what outreach ministry. Let's go back up. Maybe, can you ask your question again? Because I don't want to go down on a rabbit trail, and maybe.
Oh, I guess I was trying to see the similarity to, like you had mentioned, the circuit rider.
Yeah.
They were starting a church, but they really started a class meeting.
Right.
And then
Right.
today's outreach ministries. I was trying to see if there was a similarity.
One thing so when you brought that up, to maybe nail it into some sort of context,
Mm-hmm.
and I might be way off on what you're asking, but as far as like, do outreach efforts turn into a class meeting, or do class meetings, like, you've got to be Methodist and it's got to be members of the church? One thing that's happened with our Veterans Coffee ministry, and I felt really, really led to start this Veterans Coffee Hour ministry, and it was going to be a very informal thing with a devotion, because that's what we do, right? We get together and we talk about nothing and then do a 5-minute devotion and go, got it. So that was the plan, and I thought, well, this is great. We'll have all kinds of vets come in, and they'll talk about whatever, and hopefully they're Christians. If they're not Christians, they'll at least hear the word for a couple minutes, and that's better than nothing. Over the course of a year, it did the exact opposite of what we always hope when we start a ministry, was that it'll grow and flourish and be a ton of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very small now. And it's fantastic, because it's very small, but it has become a class meeting where we get together and we talk and we share life and we share our struggles. And sure, I still plan a devotion for it. But most of the time we don't even get to it, because the whole time that we're there, we're talking about our lives, where Christ is working in our lives, how he's working through it. I mean, it's all Jesus centered, and it's all sharing,
Mm-hmm.
just sharing life together. And so it was an outreach ministry that ended up being a class meeting.
Mm-hmm. And that's
You know?
kind of where I was going. I guess I was trying to see the relationship between those. So
I was
thank
wondering
you.
if that's what you meant. Was
Yeah,
like, if
thank
that kind
you.
of a thing is, if that's how outreach should work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I would have, and that's great that's what's just developed. outreach for me, outreach has primarily over the years taken the shape when it comes to addicts and homeless and things like that from that community. But I think when it comes within the life of the church itself, I'm hesitant. I'm hesitant to even characterize it like that,
Mm-hmm.
an outreach ministry, because I mean, people aren't projects.
Yeah.
I remember my mother was with TMS Global Mission Society, is what it used to be called.
Mm-hmm.
And before we ended up staying stateside, we considered missions overseas for a minute. We were down in Clarkston, Georgia, where they are based at. And TMS Global, for those who don't know, is a partner of the Global Methodist Church now in missions, and tremendous group. But they had at that point in time, I think they probably still have. They had ministry going on. Clarkston was a huge refugee community from all over the Middle East. And there was factories that moved out in the 80s out of the Atlanta area, but there was all these apartments buildings, so that became a primary place for bringing people in. And these were genuine. I mean, it was people were affected by war, Somalia and all the different places. Well, the Mission Society, and I'm sure others had missionaries that they had living right in those apartment complexes because the majority were Muslims. We were down there, I forget what Muslim holy day it was, and you would have thought you were in the Middle East. We're in Clarkston, Georgia, and people will walk in the streets in full regalia because of what it is in the mosques that were being built. And I remember talking to one of the directors down there about things. I was kind of poking with him some questions. And again, I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, he talked about living in that area. And he said there's a man that he knew was an Iraqi who would, every time he'd run into him outside, he'd try to wave, just kind of and acknowledge him and blow him off a little bit. Until the day came, something happened where it got him interacting. And the guy kind of said to him, kind of just, so where do you live? And he goes, well, I'm your neighbor. I live right there. And you see his whole demeanor changed. And I'll never forget, Adam was his name. Adam said to me, he says, because these people know the do-gooders. They know the people who come in and do ministry and then go back to their homes. That's an American mentality.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not a missional. And so it plays out, whether it be short-term mission trips, and I'm not knocking that. I think those are great. But it's that same kind of thing where we go and do our thing and then talk about our mission trip that we do it. But
it's
we'll
like you said, project oriented.
It's a project.
We completed the project. We're done.
And so when it comes to outreach, I say all that. So when it comes to outreach, if and when, and it's going to happen. I mean, and this is my heart to be doing this right now. Let's just say at Gaylord Methodist Church, we want to start a class meeting. Okay, how do you start that? You find where desire is.
Yeah.
The original question was desire to flee from the wrath to come.
Yeah.
We might say it differently today, but at the very least, it's not a program. You find where there's longing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where is their desire? You find your 8 people that have desire and say, okay, we're going to start. And that desire for Jesus, for my heart to know him and to, okay, let that be the engine behind that. And you do it enough, sticking to what it was. How is it with your soul? You start there. Well, then what happens from there is this. You start honest conversations. Don't make it churchy. Make it honest. Because Jesus is the truth. And wherever I tell the truth about my heart, he's in the midst of that because he's the one enabling me to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And that's where transformation happens. Tell the truth sets you free. Well, the truth of who he is meeting the truth of where I'm at, and they meet right there.
Yeah.
That's where confession is such a grace. And then when so and so's at work, and they're talking with the person at work, and it happens, you start praying, Jesus, show me. Open the doors, and my coworker starts sharing with me a little bit about their life. Then I can go, why don't you come on over with me? It's not coming to church. Why don't you come on over? We're getting together and we're talking about our hearts. This is before, not a Christian. That's okay.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
I was thinking about in one of our previous episodes too, is that, and Shane, feel free to jump back in here. But the Methodist class meetings, people came to Jesus in and through those meetings. There were unbelievers there. They were allowed to be there. And people found Christ there. And talking about being born from above, that happened in class meetings.
Yes.
And because we're talking about people who have longing, well, when you ask somebody, how is it with your soul? It's one way of saying that is, what are you longing for in here?
Exactly.
And it gives them an outlet. Why I don't have peace.
Yep.
I don't know what I'm here for. All those questions can come forth. But people can find Jesus in these meetings.
Yeah, and even if let's say you invited somebody that comes and you go, I don't really know. I know you, my friend, but I'm not going to share. I'm here. They start to hear people, and that's where when it's genuine, and it's not churchy, not saying the stuff because it's the stuff that's said, but it's the genuineness of it that resonates with people, and Jesus is in the midst of that. I'm telling you, Jesus is in the midst of that.
Someone had mentioned, maybe it was the other podcast, where you would only invite Methodists. Well, my first inclination would be no way.
Yeah,
I wouldn't even.
But I think in the church by and large is ask the question about your church. Are your small groups open to unbelievers? Or are we typically like, well, this is for the church. Let's invite the church people. But maybe that's certainly something that, even it's almost even from an evangelistic perspective, that evangelism can happen in a class meeting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And remember our mission. I'm proud of the GMC in the desire, and these conversations that we're doing right now are happening all over right now.
Praise God.
But the desire to return to our roots, when at General Conference last year, the deliberateness of changing the mission statement to say, why does the GMC exist? It's to make disciples of Jesus Christ and to spread scriptural holiness throughout the land. Well, the class meetings and holiness were directly connected. Well, if our mission is to spread scriptural holiness, it's not to create Methodist institutionalism.
Right.
The rest of the body of Christ. Right. If our charism, if one of the things that God has deposited to the people called Methodists, why did He gave it to us to give it away?
Yes.
Not to build our thing.
Right.
Because guess what? The Baptist needs to have a place, needs to know how. Because that's the other thing. We don't even know how to do this. We don't know how to deal with our own hearts. And so we try dealing with things in 1,000 different ways. That's the point. Why have the new priests in our days become counselors? Because we don't know how to deal, and the church doesn't know how to deal with our own hearts. That's not a knock on counselors. Please don't let anybody say that. But I'm saying the rise in the necessity of that. What's going on in a counseling session?
Yeah.
It's so much of what's going on in a class meeting, not because I'm getting therapy from it, but because I'm just able to share what's going on in my life.
Yeah. Truthfully.
Truthfully.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more I could say.
Okay. I think we'll stop it there. So thank you everyone for listening. We come to you from the Gaylord Methodist Church. We have 3 services, 2 on Sunday, 1 at 9 a.m., which is a more traditional format. We have a contemporary at 10:45, and every second and fourth Wednesday, we have an Encountering God service. We'd love to have you in person. If you can't, though, you can still view us via Facebook and YouTube. If you have any questions, you can Google us, Gaylord Methodist Church, or you can call the office at 989-732-5380. Thanks, everyone, for listening to us today.